In 1863, Utah was a land of harsh winters, unforgiving deserts, and families desperate to survive. But behind one family's respectable image, the Laffertys, lay secrets too disturbing to whisper aloud. Their wealth was not built on hard work alone, but on silence, cruelty, and the erasure of those who dare resist. For decades, no one questioned their influence. But history has a way of clawing through the dirt, exposing what money and fear tried to bury. What was the true cost of the Lafferty family's power? And why does their legacy still leave scars on the soil of America? Our story begins with Samuel, a young black man fleeing the violence of Missouri during the Civil War. Like many, he sought refuge in the West, chasing rumors of freedom and new beginnings. Utah, distant from the battlefields, promised land, safety, and the chance to build a life away from the shadow of slavery. Samuel was a teacher at heart, a dreamer who believed that knowledge was the first weapon against oppression. He imagined a small schoolhouse where children, black, native, and poor, could learn together. When Samuel arrived in a remote Utah valley, he encountered the Lafferty family. Outwardly, they were respected settlers with acres of land, livestock, and a reputation for discipline. Their patriarch, Thomas Lafferty, commanded authority, and his children mirrored his cold, rigid presence. To the community, the Laffertys represented strength. To Samuel, they represented opportunity, a family influential enough to help him establish his dream. At first, the family welcomed him with tight smiles and cautious interest. They offered him work, a place to sleep, and the promise of stability. But cracks soon appeared. Their kindness was conditional. Their interest was watchful. And their questions about Samuel's past, where he came from, what he hoped for, carried an undertone that chilled him. The valley seemed peaceful, but beneath the surface was an unease Samuel couldn't name. Whispers among the marginalized spoke of the Lafferty's rules, of punishments that vanished into silence. Samuel dismissed it at first, focusing instead on survival. But he would soon learn that the Lafferty family's darkest practices were not whispered rumors. They were brutal realities. It began with small observations. Samuel noticed how the Laffertys treated their hired workers, mostly poor immigrants and native laborers. They were fed sparingly, worked to exhaustion, and punished for the smallest mistakes. The Laffertys justified his order, but Samuel saw it for what it was, domination. Late one evening, he stumbled upon something more sinister. While delivering tools to barn, Samuel overheard a strange gathering. The family sat in a circle, reading aloud passages not from the Bible, but from their own twisted writings, words about purity, bloodlines, and the right to control those they deemed lesser. Samuel froze, realizing these were not mere settlers. They had built their power on rituals of subjugation. As weeks passed, Samuel's discomfort grew. He befriended a young native boy named Elias, who whispered of others who had worked the Lafferty land and never returned. Some had been beaten. Some had been buried in shallow graves beyond the tree line. Others, Elias suggested, had been subjected to rituals too cruel to describe. The truth clawed its way into Samuel's life one night when he heard screams from the Lafferty homestead. Against his better judgment, he crept closer. Through a crack in the wall, he saw a gathering that sickened him, family members forcing themselves upon the powerless, calling it purification. Their victims were left broken, shamed, and silenced. Samuel's stomach churned with horror. He wanted to run, but he also wanted to act. How many others had suffered in this hidden valley? How many voices had been swallowed by the Lafferty's wealth and influence? Yet his discovery placed him in danger. Soon after, Thomas Lafferty's eldest son began watching Samuel closely. His questions turned sharper. Why did Samuel walk the land at night? Why did he speak with outsiders? Samuel knew he was no longer a guest. He was a threat. And in Utah, 1863, a black man accusing a white family of such horrors was not just risky. It was a death sentence. The breaking point came when Elias vanished. One day, he was helping Samuel carry wood. The next, he was gone. The Laffertys claimed the boy had run off, but Samuel knew better. He searched the valley, calling his name until his throat burned. Finally, near the woods, he found a strip of torn fabric, Elias's shirt, buried in the dirt near the Lafferty land. Rage consumed him. He confronted the family, demanding answers. Their stares were cold, their silence more dangerous than denial. Finally, Thomas Lafferty spoke. Some things are not meant to be questioned. In that moment, Samuel understood the depth of their power. They had buried not just bodies, but truth itself. Their wealth was built on the backs of the silenced, their rituals cemented by fear. That night, Samuel faced a decision: stay silent and survive, or risk everything to expose them. With trembling hands, he wrote down what he had witnessed: names, places, practices. He hid the papers beneath the floorboards of the small shack he called home, hoping that if he disappeared, the truth would not. The valley seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Samuel knew the Laffertys would not let him live long after what he had seen. But he also knew silence was complicity. He had crossed the point of no return. Samuel fled the valley under cover of night, carrying only his papers and his will to survive. He traveled west, telling his story in whispers, leaving fragments of truth wherever he went. Some dismissed him, calling him bitter or delusional. Others listened, shaken by the possibility of what families like the Laffertys had hidden behind closed doors. Though Samuel lived in constant fear of being tracked, his records endured. Years later, they resurfaced, forcing historians to confront a chilling reality. The Lafferty family's power was not simply economic. It was ritualized control, exploitation, and abuse masked as faith and discipline. For Samuel, survival came at a price. He never built the schoolhouse he dreamed of, never found peace. But his courage ensured that the Lafferty name would not remain untarnished by lies. The lesson lingers. The story of the Laffertys is not an isolated tale of cruelty. It is part of the broader fabric of America's history, where racial injustice and exploitation were often hidden under the guise of order, morality, or religion. Families built legacies not through honor, but through silence, violence, and the erasure of those who could not fight back. And so the question remains, how many other stories, buried in forgotten valleys and dusty records, are still waiting to be uncovered? And when they surface, will we choose to look away, or to confront the truth that binds our past or our present?